Hey everyone, this is Deborah Anderson, the Black Woman Animator, coming back to you with another video. This video is going to be about what I learned when I taught a class at Loyola University New Orleans. So last spring I got the opportunity to teach a Cinema 4D class at Loyola University New Orleans. And it was like a great opportunity. Finally, a time that I could sit down and kind of write out what exactly I wanted to teach people, because I've always been looking for that, but I never had the time to kind of segment out to do that. So when you're forced to do it, it's really good. So I taught juniors and seniors how to use the program Cinema 4D. It was, I believe, their first 3D class as in computer animation class that they've had in the design department. And so I had pretty much 3 students throughout the entire semester. And some things that I learned is that it is very important to tell your students that they're doing well. And I mean, that's self-explanatory, but in the specific way that I mean is that when you're teaching people animation, they really have no concept of when they're doing something well, because they only have this idea that, okay, I'm learning this new thing, and if I'm learning this new thing, I'm obviously going to suck at it, so anything I produce is probably going to be sucky. But the way I teach, I can kind of draw out a lot out of people in a short period of time. And so something that was very important that I didn't kind of realize till later is to tell them, like, wow, that looks really good. You're doing that right. Like, it looks really awesome, because I had one student who was kind of quirky in himself, so it didn't really matter what he said to him, but he thought he was going to get a D on a project, and it was like, for a beginner, this is really good. And so you have to like continually tell them how good they're doing when they are doing good, because animation is not something that people are introduced to. It's not like, oh, playing basketball or something where you can see all the time, whether you watch like the NBA, WNBA, college, high school, you can see what good people look like, so you can kind of assess when you're not good. But you don't see that behind the scenes of creating animation, so you really can't self-assess whether you're doing good or not. So as a teacher, you have to do that for them. Another thing I learned is, well, I kind of can still need to learn, is how to bridge that gap between when I teach my students the fact that all things are made up of shapes. So I'll take them through an exercise where I'll say, okay, if we use a sphere, what can you make from a sphere? So that's a basketball, that's a bowling ball, that's a globe, that's maybe a lamp or something like that. What can we make from a cylinder? You can make a Coke can, you can make a tree trunk, you can make a stand for a tripod. And so I take them through all of these shapes to kind of get them to understand that in 3D, you can make anything from shapes. But then as a 3D modeler myself, I understand that there's a way to shape objects by pushing and pulling vertices and edges and faces and stuff like that. And sometimes when you teach your students the shapes thing, they kind of get stuck in that. So I know one of my students, when I taught him about the shapes, he was like creating a pig, but he was just creating the pig all using just simple shapes. And so trying to bridge that gap to, and then I gave them assignments where they would have to make certain, like I would give them in-class assignments where they had to make certain things, and so they kind of were stuck on the shapes thing even after I taught them the modeling piece. So I had to do some exercises to make sure they understood that once you have the shape, you have to form it into what you're going for. So you can use a cylinder as a tree trunk, but a straight cylinder is not gonna look like a realistic tree trunk. You have to like add the curvations or add the kind of long divots that are in tree trunks to make it look more realistic. And that kind of goes into another thing that I learned while I was teaching, was that sometimes you have to pivot. And so I did create a syllabus, but I learned, just like a budget, you create a budget just to have something to strive to. So my syllabus was something to strive to, but I knew that if my students weren't learning a certain concept, that I had to kind of take a step back and give them more time to be able to be successful in a certain task. So again, with the simple objects to the pushing and pulling of vertices and actual real 3D modeling, I took a step back and I was like, okay, this class we're going to make an apple. So you can start an apple with a sphere, but you're going to have to push in the top. You're going to have to create the little four kind of curved pieces at the bottom. It's going to have to go in. So I was able to emulate how I would quickly 3D model an apple, and then give them time to get comfortable with the pushing and the pulling and the editing and making things curved and stuff like that. And then I did that with a wine glass too. And so sometimes you just have to not just stick to what you planned, because if what you planned is not good, then you're going to do a disservice to your students. So that is a few things I learned when I was teaching. That was not my first college course. I did get this teach a continuing education course at Delgado in 2013, but it was my first full-length course where I got to touch, I like to teach college students, because the continuing education was adults. And so this was like my first interaction with college students, and it was a really awesome experience, and it kind of gave me some tips to apply to some other ventures that I want to do as far as teaching people animation. So if you have any questions about teaching animation or even learning animation, please put it in the comments section, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. I'll see you later.